Welcome to the channel after an extended delay. This week I'm going to be kitbashing a White Scars librarian for my very small White Scars force. The librarian I've chosen to go with is the librarian in Phobos armour because he has a bit more of that rough and ready feel that seems to suit the White Scars, so the model is already leaning into the lore quite nicely. White Scars are a semi-nomadic, fast, thrill-seeking chapter that ride heavy-duty motorbikes into battle, and they're very loosely based on some cultures that originate around the Asian steppe in Central and East Asia around the Middle Ages. Naturally, there's blends of both samurai and Mongolian horse-mounted archers in their theme, so I wanted to include some of that into a very simple kitbash, just to give a bit more flavour to this guy. First things first, I built the model basically to completion, barring the left arm, which is currently holding a power sword. I decided that given the lore around the White Scars and the types of culture that they are based on, I wanted to use a halberd here in the form of a naginata, which is a two-handed weapon with a curved blade. The curved blade just seemed to suit these guys so well, so I took a Grey Knight's halberd, and after measuring up to make sure it was all going to fit correctly, I cut away some of the back of the blade to give it a very slight curve. This was just a lot of back and forth, just to make sure that cut was even. I cut both the pommel and blade off of the sword to give me a flat hand texture that I can then pin the halberd to. Pinning is stronger than just putting plastic to plastic, especially when it's something slightly heavier like this halberd. So I also had to cut around the hand holding the halberd so I had two flush edges on the staff. Once this was cut down, I made sure they were shaved to be completely flat, because otherwise I'd have a very wonky halberd, which just, the idea would be great, but it would look terrible. After a quick check to make sure that the halberd was going to sit flush against the hand once glued, I grabbed my pin vise and drilled a couple of holes. This can be quite a fiddly process, so you just got to make sure that you're patient, you go slow, and you're as central as you can possibly be when drilling. To be honest, I'm still pretty bad at this, and I'm genuinely quite surprised that it turned out as well as it did. After that, I grabbed a bit of paperclip, I have tons of these lying around, got rid of the plastic sheath around it, and cut a tiny bit of the metal wire inside. You can use 1mm wire here, I just use paper clips because I have a bunch. Once that tiny bit of wire was clear, I used a little dab of super glue and made sure that it fit nicely inside the head of the halberd. This will be my first pin. Then I had to cut the wire down to size once it had dried. I used some super glue accelerator here just to help it out, glued the other end and then attached it to the hand. Once again, just be patient and take your time. If you force it, it might break some of the very thin plastic around the drill site. Then I just rinsed and repeated on the other half and I was good to go. I very quickly noticed that the halberd was slightly wonky, but you've still got a bit of time to work here even with the super glue, and the wire being wire means it's ever so slightly flexible, so I just bent the halberd back into shape. Third warning, because all warnings come in threes, just be gentle. Bend it very slowly and don't do any harsh movements because you will just snap it. There we go, quick bit of surgery complete. It's looking decent. I was quite pleased with it at this point, but I felt it needed something a bit more, so I got out my tub of Vaseline and got ready for a good time. By good time, of course, I mean sculpting. I have some brown stuff lying around, which is a grey and brown mix, a bit like green stuff, but brown. So I made sure that it was nicely lubricated. Don't know if that's the right term, but to basically stop it sticking to everything, I covered it in Vaseline, covered my work surface in Vaseline, flattened it out, and cut some thin strips for some nice leather wrap. With the Scars being more inclined to live off the land and basically live on their bikes, their mounts if you like, I figured there'd be a fair bit of natural items in use by them, so why not some leather, maybe from some animal they've skinned or some trophy they've hunted. So I thought this would be a good idea to wrap around the handle of the halberd. When sculpting this, I basically let gravity do the work, because if you press too hard or manipulate too much, it will tear or rip or worse than all that, you'll get it perfectly right and then it'll have a fingerprint on it. So essentially I just gently put the first link down and then twisted the halberd round and round, occasionally bringing in my scalpel, which is quite blunt, and very gently removing any snags. No, I didn't wrap the entire halberd. This was just for a bit of decorative purposes and to add a bit of different colour, and I thought it looked quite good. I had a bit of spare at the end, which I just tied onto the end to make it look like some kind of banner flapping in the breeze. Again, totems and icons and bits of fabric very much suits this chapter. All I had to do afterwards was make sure that it was flowing the same direction as the purity seals and random trinkets that the librarian is holding, so it fitted in nicely with the model. I quickly test fitted against the model just to make sure it suited the pose, and it did. I was happy, so on to the rest of the model. Now time for some very simple kit bashing. I have a few Space Wolf bits and Raven Guard bits left over, so these knives with leather scabbards are perfect for both Space Wolves and White Scars, and why not some bird feathers and a bird head or something. Again, very natural chapter out in the steppes or the plains on their bikes. Why not? This guy is literally called a Stormcaller, so you might as well have some bird bits on him. Yeah. I don't know, it just seems to work. So yeah, skulls and feathers and a stabby knife. There you go. The key thing here was just to make sure they fit with the theme of the model, so the knife is off to the left with the purity seals and the feathers are fluttering in the wind. I was going to say flapping, but it's dead. Birds don't flap when they're dead. Once that was all on and nice and secure, I reattached the arm. This was a little bit harder than you might think. So the arm went on fine, but then I had to add the shoulder pad, and I basically had to completely rejig the model because you're not supposed to put the backpack on until the arm is on, because the shoulder pad is moulded to the cloak. You live and learn. After scrolling through Instagram, I saw that White Scars generally have a lot of skulls and stuff for trophies, so I thought I'd add a skull. He's taken a trophy of some poor human who got in his way. So I attached his little buddy Steve just with a little dab of glue, and that was it for the conversion. I went quite light on this one because I wanted to honour the original model, so we know that it's definitely still a Phobos librarian. After that, all I had to do was put on a 40mm base, paint him up, and here's what I ended up with.